Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And once again, just like last year, the NFL is delaying games, which is throwing off my schedule completely. Like, I have no idea who's playing where, and we're in the thick of fantasy football playoffs, and ESPN sent out like a message, I don't know if you got it, it might have only went to playoff teams, Matt, where they said that the waiver was going to be on Thursday this week, and I'm like, I think ours is already on Thursday anyway. And so I was confused on what changes they're going to have. There's a game going on right now between, the Rams,
and Washington.
The Rams and the Seahawks, and then Washington and Philly, which they put them on at the same time. It makes no sense to me. Like, why not kind of space them out? Maybe the networks don't want to push news out of the way. That's my only thing. Because, don't a lot of news stations have, the 6 p.m. slot knocked down? So that's why games usually, start at 7 or 7:30 or whatever. So, maybe that's what's going on. But for a league that was pushing 100% vaccinations, I don't know how this is going to get better. Right? They're having the players sit out. You're already vaccinated. There's nothing else you can do if they're testing you all the time. So, we'll see. I don't think this is going to be the first of the delays. Obviously, we're in the thick of flu season. And so I wonder how the NFL is really going to react, because it's only going to spread around the holidays. People are going to be traveling more, and we'll see what happens. But,
I think with the NFL, I think they're going to basically be following a similar situation to what the NBA has already come out and said. And when you look at the high percentage of vaccination rates for the NFL and NBA, you're not going to get a higher level of cooperation to get some of these vaccines, and players are still contracting and spreading the virus to each other. So I think what you're seeing with the NBA is what the stance that you're going to see more often is just, as players get it, they're going to have them do the safety precautions. But as far as what's really affected the leagues the last couple of years has been the close contacts. And with the contact tracing, I think what you're going to see is a lot more, the time frames are going to change as far as how fast you can return to play. Because if the person that's positive is there, instead of having to quarantine an entire position group, there are teams where all of their quarterbacks or all their running backs have gone out because one guy is positive, you may be able to say, well, no one else is showing symptoms, they're testing negative, they're allowed to return to participation. And I think that's going to be the route you're going to see more leagues take.
Well, I think even the NBA is allowing teams to bring on more players. I saw a lot of Michigan guys that had been out of the league return to rosters for that same exact scenario, where if a guy gets sick, they wanted more guys on hand to just, call them in. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL did that. But the NFL is different because, the NBA, who cares if they have to move a game around or whatever? I think Michigan basketball just had their game canceled because they were playing one of the Purdue schools, Purdue, Fort Worth or whatever. I don't even know. It's not Fort Worth. But they had COVID, so they had to cancel. And I think you've seen a couple other teams like UNC Kentucky, I think, rescheduled a game because their opponents both had it and they had to cancel. So, those sports, it doesn't really matter. Winter will be over. They'll be back to normal. But right now, you're in the NFL. These are the weeks where you're getting into who's making the playoffs. And they're already, if you're breaking this down, there's so many teams right now that are on the brink that it's going to be crazy if this somehow affects them. Steelers are right there, right behind the Ravens. The Bills, my preseason pick, they haven't been playing good. So they're the 7th seed right now. There are at least 6 teams here? I'm trying to count in my head. 6, 7, 8, 10 teams that are within a game or a game and a half of each other. Starting from the 4 seed down, all the way to 13 in the AFC. The Broncos being the last one. So any of those teams could make it, And the margins are so close because now you're getting into the part of the season where you're going to be playing those games. Which, what the hell was Romo talking about during the game? I know he was slamming Roethlisberger the whole game, it seemed like. But then he was talking about how the NFL really scheduled this Titans-Steelers game because it's a great rivalry game. What the hell rivalry is that? I don't know anyone in Pittsburgh that's like, you know what, I hate the Titans. Like, oh yeah, remember when they used to be the Oilers? Like, no, people probably don't even know that because Titans don't really matter, right? Maybe that Steve McNair year, but did the Steelers even play them in the playoffs that year? I can't remember. That's such a long time ago that, to me, I'm like, what are you talking about? I could see you're saying like this is going to be a big game because they're two good teams, but that's not a rivalry game. The NFL's ending on the rivalry game against the Browns and then the Ravens. Those are the main rivals. And then the Bengals after that, but not the Titans. I could probably name 5 other teams ahead of them that I think Steelers fans hate more. What do you think?
I would say that.
I mean, it's dumb. Like, what are you talking about? Then he's like slamming Roethlisberger, and the Steelers pull out the win. And it's like, dude, just lay off. What are you talking about? He seemed bitter. And then I saw that he was trending because of it, and I'm like, so it's not only me that thinks he sounds awful this game. It must be certain quarterbacks that he hates. And then someone was saying that he's going to get the commentator bump and make it into the NFL Hall of Fame as a quarterback, and I was like, for what? If he gets in, then you have to put Phillip Rivers in. Right?
Yeah. One would think.
And probably, McNabb? A couple other guys that were better than him that probably aren't going to make it. I don't know how you would look at him and be like, and then my man Eli Manning. I've been pushing him for the Hall of Fame. Like, there's no way Romo gets in over Eli Manning. And everyone's been telling me for the past 5 years that Eli Manning has no chance. Just because he's on TV? Then put him in as a commentator. Don't put him in as a whatever. But that just threw me off, and I was like, why am I listening to this? I should need to turn this back off. That's why you go with no sound, Matt. No sound, and it works out perfect. You don't have to hear those guys. But then I won't know who's going to make the Hall of Fame, you know. The only guy I actually like listening to these days is Brian Griese. Michigan guy. He doesn't really get too involved one way or the other. And they kind of joke around, like that Monday night team, even like Randy Moss and them, Steve Young, like they're all down on the field having fun, making jokes and stuff. The other NFL crews don't do that. Michael Strahan made a joke about, what the hell was it? The Shaggy song? Wasn't Me. And the crew just looked at him and it went completely dead. And I thought, oh my gosh. Whoever it was, Terry Bradshaw or one of them, they didn't have any idea what the song was that he referenced. And he's like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like an old man show. Like, you can't even make a joke because they don't get it. And so I felt bad for Strahan. He tried to like cover it up, but I'm like, bro, I got the joke immediately. It was a good one. I don't know why. It must be tough. Must be a tough crowd. Like the Monday night crowd to me is the better crew right now. That's the only one I really listen to. Tony Romo, I know he can break down the game and call plays, but he didn't do it on the field. Don't kid yourself. All I remember him for is fumbling that extra point. Or was it a field goal? What did he fumble? He tried to run it when he was holding it.
Extra point.
Yeah, cost him. That's all I'll remember him for. Anything stood out to you this week?
Just Pittsburgh finding a way to win in spite of so many glaring issues with their defense, with Matt Canada running an even worse version of Randy Fitzger's, who ran a worse version of Todd Haley's offense.
It's not the offense, Matt. It's Ben Roethlisberger. I'm telling you. Matt Canada just doesn't come in and run the same offense as those other guys. And Ben looks like garbage for almost the beginning of the game. It's almost like, I wonder if he's saving himself. Because like even if you watch like the first 3 quarters, you're like, oh, this is awful. What are you doing? And then you get to this like the end of the game, and it's like, now he's throwing the ball. And I wonder if he's just preserving himself. Like, you know what? We're going to struggle through, keep it close, and then I'm going to try to win the game at the end of the game, which is different than what he's been doing in the past. Normally, it's like, hey, if they don't jump out to a lead, he starts to really force things and throws 4 interceptions. And I don't remember seeing that much this year. It's more like, hey,
I know this is
we're just going to barely win. His QBR is 39.4, Matt.
I know this is like this is going to fly in the face of a lot of common sense, but I almost wonder if Pittsburgh just came out with their no huddle, or like their end of half, end of game offense, and just ran that the entire time.
No, they can't. Ben's arm doesn't hold up. I think he's just like protecting it.
But
like,
it almost
we're just going to throw these slants or whatever, these crossing routes low, punt the ball away. If I can get out of here with only throwing 20 passes or whatever, I don't even know how many is he average in a game this year.
But I mean, even within some of the 2-minute drill stuff, he's throwing the ball on time. He's getting the ball out quick. They're hustling to the line, like it. I guess I don't know. I watch. It's like they give Pittsburgh, with the exception of Claypool pointing, which I'm glad he didn't do it during halftime this week. But when they're operating within the 2-minute drill, they move the ball right down the field like effortless. It's like, oh, we got a minute and 10 seconds to go 80 yards, chunk, field goal, like automatic.
Yeah, but even if I'm reading this, like now reading the stat line, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Because it's like Ben Roethlisberger, short pass. Ben Roethlisberger, sacked. Ben Roethlisberger, short pass. Short, incomplete pass. Where's the other one? Short pass, left. So maybe he is just passing short at the end of the game, pass incomplete. So nothing really down the field. There's a lot of runs mixed in.
Well, he's not driving the ball down the field, but I think like part of that is also the fact that Claypool's been so inconsistent. Like he's tended to like that big receiver, like the Plexico Burress's, like the vertical stretch guys. When Antonio Brown was there, like he had that deep threat that he could throw the ball down the field to.
Speaking of my man Antonio Brown, let's just be honest, right? Antonio Brown's going to come back to the Buccaneers because my man Mike Evans got hurt and Godwin tore his ACL, right? Did you see that?
Well, I don't know, because Bruce Arians said if he has one slip up, he's gone.
Yeah, but they brought him back and they were like, things change or details change or something. Like I'm not even kidding.
But he said he's on a tight leash.
Which
and any slip ups, he's gone. Like,
I'm watching the game. Godwin gets hurt, tore his ACL, whatever. Mike Evans, I'm pretty sure he had a concussion. So I don't know if you watched the play. But I had him on my fantasy team, so I'm like, all right, if Mike Evans can get me 10 points or so, I probably win. Nope. 2. He makes 1 catch. He jumps up, and he slams his head off the turf. So then they show him on the sideline, and I'm like, oh, he has a concussion for sure. He's on the sideline with the trainer. They're like looking at his neck, and then he goes to the tunnel, and they said, well, Mike Evans has a hamstring injury. I'm like, a hamstring injury? What are you talking about?
They asked him what was wrong with his concussion. He said, yeah, it's my hamstring.
They're like, yo, yeah, what happened to your head? Why are we looking at your neck, bro? He's like, no, my hamstring's really bothering me. And then they even said, well, the hamstring really started bothering him 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, if you watch the play, he clearly hit his head. And someone was like wondering, did they do that to get around concussion protocol? And like, no one's going to question it, but whatever. I was hoping, all right, maybe it is. Maybe hopefully it is a concussion. Maybe he'll be back next week because I need him. After that poor showing, I was like, holy cow. I still ended up winning because Gabriel Davis, Matt, thank the Lord, he sent the angel Gabriel down, and he got me 25 points and 2 touchdowns. Which I told you, the guy that's in first, his team's a juggernaut. He outbid me both for Penny, the running back, and Alan Lazard. Gabriel was my backup. I was like, Lazard's going to go off. I know he's going to go off. And boom, didn't get him. And I'm like, all right, I have no chance. I got to put Gabriel in. I also picked up Bateman from the Ravens, but when Lamar was out, I'm like, there's no way I'm playing him. which I think he had like 1 point or something. So I'm like, I guess I got to go with Davis. Let's roll and see what happens. He single-handedly won, moving on to the next round. But getting back to the Antonio Brown thing, so Evans goes out, and Godwin, they're like, yeah, he's out for the rest of the year. Godwin is. Evans, they didn't really say anything on. And at the same exact time, Arians come out and says, we're going to reevaluate the Antonio Brown situation. And I'm like, really? Really? The NFL's like, oh, well, hey, you guys should probably bring Antonio Brown back because your team's awful. You're going to be looking like the 2013 Patriots or whatever year those were where Tom Brady had no weapons. Remember those years? Where it's like...
You mean like 2 years ago when Jameis Winston led the league in passing with a bunch of bum guys?
Well, hey, did you see that they called out your man Winston? Did the Buccaneers play the Saints?
Yeah, and the Saints beat them.
Yeah, did you see the graphic they showed?
No.
They had a like a little Jameis Winston like computer animated guy where he was just throwing the ball into the dirt, and they had it say like Saints worst pass completion in the league. It was like, oh, really taking shots at Jameis when they were clearly winning with him at quarterback. So very interesting. They had like all three of their quarterbacks just throwing the ball like right in the dirt, but the one they had like right in front was Winston. I'm like, oh god.
Well, you gotta just keep throwing dirt when you can.
I mean, that's where they must be making their cuts, like their budget cuts, because some of the graphics are comical, and I don't know if they try to do that on purpose. Where it's like a caricature of the player. Looks nothing like him. It's like poor animation. I'm like, what am I watching?
So they can't get sued for defamation of character.
Is it a YouTube short? Like, what is this? But yeah, I'm like, all right. Yeah, Saints won that game. Everyone picked the Bucs. The Saints, or the Bucs already wrapped the playoffs up, I think. Like, I'm pretty sure they clinched, or maybe they didn't. But I thought that they said that they had clinched because of something to do with the way the tiebreakers worked in the NFC South. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that Saints game changed it. But they're right there. The Packers, they looked good. And I think you're going to get into another Aaron Rodgers special where he's the only player that's going to beat them. If he doesn't go for the touchdown like last year in the playoffs, they're going to lose. But who knows? Arizona looked awful. How the hell do you lose to the Lions so bad? I saw someone bet $6,000 on that game. They thought it was going to be easy money because like you bet $6,000, you're not winning that much either.
Ooh.
So what a kick in the nuts when you're like, I'm going to bet on the Cardinals. There's no way they lose to the Lions. I'll collect my $1,000 winnings. You lose $6,000 instead.
That's my luck.
Depressing. So, and they're like the Lions are playing themselves out of the first overall pick. They do have the tie, which gives them a little bit better of a strength of victory. Now, Urban Meyer, my man, he gets fired, and he can't let it go. Matt, did you see his comments? Where he's like, "Yeah, I really made some mistakes. I wish I had some more time or whatever." And I'm like, "Man, that's awful." I also saw a graphic where someone said, going back to like 2000 or something, if you're a first-time NFL coach from college, like your record is going to be really bad. The only one that actually had a really good record, of course, was Jim Harbaugh. And he got to the Super Bowl, won like the NFC Championship. He was there like 2 or 3 times. The second best, I think, was Bill O'Brien. And he was barely above 500. Everyone else had awful records. Maybe there was someone I missed. There was a bunch of coaches on the list, but I was trying to look in terms of winning percentage. And it was like, you're either Harbaugh or you suck. Like if you're coming from college into the league, and someone was like, well, Pete Carroll's not on there. But Pete Carroll had coached the Patriots before he went to USC and then came back. So I don't think they were actually looking at guys like that. Because I think he would have been in the time frame. When did he go to USC? It was like 2000 something, right?
Yeah.
It was like right around when they got Belichick. Wasn't Belichick his replacement, or did they have someone in between? I can't remember now. Because he took him. Didn't Pete Carroll take him to Super Bowl?
I'm going to say no.
Who took him to the Super Bowl then in between? I thought someone... didn't Bledsoe take him to one?
Parcells.
Oh, okay.
Brett Favre beat him.
Yeah, Brett Favre. And my Packers, As a future owner of the Packers. I look back fondly on those years, Matt.
I'm sure you do.
I'm trying to look and see. So he went to USC in 2001. Yeah, there was a year gap where he was the coach till 1999. So he must have took an Urban Meyer year break and then came back. So, I mean...
because Pete Carroll was the stopgap after Parcells left. Because Parcells had the famous comment to Robert Kraft about shopping for the ingredients. And Pete Carroll was like, he got up and like made a joke about it. I was like, I don't care. I just use whatever ingredients my wife picks up at the store.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you'd even remember that.
Because I'm a Bill Parcells fan. He's a Florida State guy.
Oh, I feel like Florida State's right now in a crisis.
They're not in a crisis.
You want to talk about that now? Or you're going to save it for signing day?
Guess what? We can talk about it now if you want to. Because the perception from people like you and
people
ESPN,
like me.
yes,
I'm a college football
like
fan, Matt. I have nothing against Florida State.
You do. You enjoy throwing dirt.
Why am I enjoying it?
On the perceived grave.
No, Florida State's, if they're decent, then at least the ACC can keep the SEC out. I'd much rather play Florida State than have two SEC teams in the playoffs, right?
Fair enough.
Or Clemson or whatever, but like you can't have Pitt come out and be like choking all over the place. Like to Western Michigan. I'm telling you, if they don't lose to Western Michigan, they might be in the playoffs.
There's a possibility of that.
And that's where, like, I was going to say this later for bowl season, but Kenny Pickett's not playing in the game. And either is Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. It's like, all right, why would I watch that game? Michigan State I know they have some good receivers, but like their offense was built around him breaking long runs. That's how they beat Michigan. Take him out of the Michigan game, that might be a 20-point loss for them. He scored 5 touchdowns. It might have even been worse. It might have been like the Ohio State game. Because like I don't think Michigan really... I think the planning was kind of like, hey, let's see if he can beat us, and they beat him. Ohio State was like, we're not letting him beat us. And then Michigan State was like, well, we can't do anything else. And so like I don't think people really realized at that point, until after the Michigan game, I think that's when teams were like kind of figured them out. Because didn't they lose like the very next week to Purdue? I think they saw how they lost, and they were like, all right, we can make adjustments based on what Michigan did and really beat them. And then they haven't been able to recover. And then you take that piece out, and they're going against Pitt. Pitt has one of the best passing offenses. Michigan State's passing defense is last, or at least they were last. I don't see how they would jump up after that Ohio State beatdown. And then Pickett's like, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out. I mean, probably good for him. He did do the fake slide. He might have some people targeting him and stuff, but in terms of bowl games, like at this point, they don't matter. They don't matter. Like, I didn't even know. I mean, I think we missed the bowl pick'em because I thought we had one extra week. I guess I didn't really realize how late it was with all the games shifted and stuff. The NFL, that extra week really killed me because, like, I'm used to having playoffs, and then I know that the bowl season is starting, but now our football playoffs are, like, fantasy playoffs are later. So it's like, it's a complete mess. At least on my schedule. I don't like the extra NFL week. Like, I think it takes something away just having another meaningless game. And now they're probably pointing at it and saying, like, but look at all these teams that are right there in the playoffs. The NFC has the same type of long jam, but theirs is really only for the last 2 spots. From the 49ers at 6th all the way down to, like, the Falcons in the 11th spot. But, like, really, do you think the Falcons are going to be any good in the playoffs? Like, no. Or, like, the Eagles. Like, Matt Ryan, bless his soul, because he's still on my fantasy bench. He looks like trash. If he's out there, I'm not going to be like, hey, you know what? Matt Ryan's going to win this playoff game. It's going to be like, Matt Ryan might leave on a stretcher. Like, there's no in between. It's not like, hey, he's going to really have a game and go off here. And same with the Eagles. It's like, they don't know what they're doing. They've been a mess since they fired their coach because they didn't want to play Wentz, and then they end up getting rid of Wentz anyway. So, I don't know. I hate the extra week. Is it going to really matter? Same with like the extra 1-game playoff game. Like, just make it an even and get rid of the buys. I don't think the buys really help that much, and I think you always see like teams going to buy, and then they end up losing anyway because they're a little bit rusty. Like, get rid of the bye. That's why I hope college football doesn't put it in. And I mean, like, it would be a benefit to Michigan this year. But, like, realistically, is Michigan going to lose to, like, Northern Illinois or someone? Like, if they ended up bringing in teams from, like, the lower conferences, which I think they should, I think it would be beneficial. You're getting a whole month off. Why not just play the teams from the conferences that the pundits say can't compete? Right? That would be a tune-up game. Everyone's saying that Cincinnati can't compete with Alabama, so that's going to be Alabama's warm-up game. They're going to go fresh into the playoff. But to me, it's like, all right, well, show me something. Just let all the conferences go in and make a cap. If you want it to be the top 8, do the top 8. I think there's only 10 of them, though, anyway. But, like, to make the bowl games matter or, like, these other games matter, it's like, no one cares. Someone said something, like, we talking about Florida State. Well, let's just get into that. You have anything else for the NFL?
Other than the Raiders beating the Browns last night with, like, 1,000 guys injured.
Well, everyone's
still
injured,
in the hunt, and
everyone's out. That's what I'm like. It's so bad this year that just watching it's hard to watch because you don't know what's going to happen. People are in protocol. I'm like, are they hurt? Are they in protocol? So they're fine. And then some of them are missing 2 weeks because of the way the date testing works. And so it's like, all right, all these teams are out. Like the Lions can barely field a team, and yet they come out and crush Arizona. It's like, Arizona, what are you doing? How are you losing to a team that has half their guys out? And bad. Like they made Goff look like he was playing with the Super Bowl Rams, not the Lions. But we'll see what happens. I don't really have any new insights in the NFL this week. We'll see. Things will start to clarify itself in the next couple weeks when we get ready for the playoff push. But I wouldn't look too much into the Steelers winning because, like I said, they have to turn it around. The Ravens keep going for 2, though, which to me, it's like one time is fine. But when you have a backup quarterback in there, what the hell are you going for 2 for? And you're throwing like the worst pass because if he looks back, the other guy's wide open. Like I think Lamar Jackson scores on that play. But Huntley or whoever their quarterback was, like he didn't look back. He was zeroed in on Andrews, and so was the defense. And it was an awful throw. They tried to like bail him out on the commentary saying that the defender just tipped it. The tip made it actually closer than what it was. He could have just let it go and it would have went flying into nowhere. So, I don't know. Anything else for the NFL?
Well, I did see that, like the Ravens plays that you're making, and like I very rarely will I agree with what John Harbaugh does with the Ravens, but I like the way that he was like looking at it from the perspective that you're in his shoes. I love the way that he did it because it wasn't just him saying we're going for it. Like he's getting the input of the guys that are out there playing. And when the plays didn't work, like if he converts those and they win, he's a genius today. And all the analytics are saying, oh yeah, that was the right call. He should have did this. But because he didn't convert, he's the asshole in the deal. And I like the fact that it wasn't just him like listening to some statistician saying you need to go for it here, you need to, like he's soliciting the input of the players that are out there on the field that are that know the guys that they're playing against. They felt confident in going for 2. So I was okay with that, knowing that at the end of the day, the players have to be the one to make the plays. You may think I should just play it safe because one of the things he's like, well, we can kick it here and just play for overtime. Like we can do that. And they're like, no, we're good. We got it. Let's go for it. And it's like, I think when you ride that momentum, you got to take advantage of it. So I know given the same scenario, I probably would have did the same thing.
Yeah, I guess I really don't care. I already went for it most of the time too. Cause like go for the win. I just didn't like the play call. You're rolling him out and he's not seeing the whole field. Why not just drop him back and then have him run like he scored on? Like, to me, that would have been a much better move. Use Andrews as a decoy. He was, like, zoned in on him the entire time. Of course, they're going to double cover him. But the Ravens, I mean, are pushing themselves out of the playoffs. And, like, it's going to come down to possibly that last game of the year Baltimore versus Pittsburgh. It also depends on what happens out west. I mean, you have the Chargers. They're ahead. They're going to have to play the remainder of like their schedule against the Broncos and the Raiders, both fighting for a spot. Maybe they're easily coast in. The Chiefs have to play the Steelers next week. Who do you think wins that game?
The Steelers-Chiefs game?
Yeah.
It depends on when they play it and how many of the Chiefs guys are out. I mean, right now, I think with all the guys that they have out, is trending towards Pittsburgh. You know, I saw someone hating on Pittsburgh saying naturally they play Seattle without Russell Wilson, and like they're playing all these tough games without like critical people playing. So, but then you tie Detroit, so go figure.
And that's what I said. The Detroit game is going to be the one that keeps them out, and it's going to be the same thing that's been happening under Tomlin, where they lose or tie that one game, and it's like, what are you doing? Win the games. I mean, if they win out, they're in the playoffs. No matter what.
They beat Tennessee without Derrick Henry. Now they're gonna be playing without like Mahomes and Kelsey. And
don't remind me
Tyreek
about
Hill.
Derrick Henry. Whenever Mike Evans goes to the IR, I'll send you a screenshot of my bench. It's Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Thielen, and Mike Evans. My top 4 guys, dude, all out going into the second week of the playoffs. It's like looking around like, who are you guys? My guys on my team. Because even the other guys like Matt Ryan, I have to bench him. Like, dog, you're out. You're out. I might be picking up the Ravens quarterback. Who knows what I'm going to be doing? I'm all going crazy this last week. But we'll be checking back in. I threw the NHL on here. They're going to be skipping the Olympics this year because of COVID and the travel restrictions and stuff. And they've been having trouble getting guys back from Canada and different international travel from the United States. So I think it's going to hit them harder than we've talked about like the NBA or so much like the NFL, where they don't have to deal with that. I mean, the NBA has a team in Toronto or whatever, and they're one of the teams I saw picked up Stauskas, one of the old Michigan guys, as like an extra COVID guy just to have on the team. It's like, all right, they'll be right there, but they can also limit that. Didn't they end up playing last year in the United States somewhere? I can't remember what they ended up doing to get around that restriction. It's really only one team, where in the NHL, you have a whole block of teams in Canada.
Yeah.
So, like, getting out of the Olympics is kind of like, all right, if you're not going to play in the Olympics, why have the Olympics? You know? Or just don't play in them anymore at all. Go back to it being pure amateur. Because then it's kind of like, all right, did our team win? Are they actually good? I don't know. I don't get it. But we'll see. I think there's going to be some more shifts because there's just bad timing to have their Winter Olympics. I'm surprised that they didn't delay it a year like they did the summer ones, knowing that it's not taken care of yet. But getting into early signing day, I don't know if we even talked about it on the show, because it was a rumor at the point where Deion Sanders came in and said that he was going to shock the world, and he signed the number 1 recruit, Travis, away from Florida State. Was it Travis Hunter?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I mean, I think it's good for him. I mean, a lot of people are saying, like, the big thing has been throw Florida State under the bus. He was committed to Florida State for 2 years and was pushing to recruit the Noles. To be honest, I would have been bothered more had he have been like flipped to Georgia or flipped to Alabama. Like, that would, to flip to another Power 5 really would have pissed me off, to be honest. But for him to flip to a historical black college and to flip to Deion, like, it's water under the bridge. Like, I hope he does well. But at the end of the day, he never bought me a beer. So I'm gonna focus on like the stuff that I do enjoy, which is the Noles reeling in the number 13, 14 class.
Well, you want to tell us the real reason? It's because you know that Deion will be bringing him back to Florida State next year when he's the head coach?
You can bookmark this, that if Deion is the head coach at Florida State, I will buy you a case of beer of your choosing.
Matt, It's either him or Urban, right?
No. I tell you can add Urban to that list because if they hire him, I may just stop watching college football altogether.
Whoa, just become a Michigan fan. What are you talking about? Why would you skip it?
I would just because it wouldn't be my heart would just be broken. I'd be done.
Just come to Michigan. Everyone hates Urban anyway. It's a perfect fit for you.
With what I see, I'll just go full-fledged Pitt, and I'll just truly just live in a pit of misery.
Why would you do that to yourself? Although they are ACC champs, so they're in a better spot than Florida State anyway.
Well, I feel like if you didn't actually know that Florida State signed a pile of offensive lineman recruits, including like a 5-star offensive lineman from Georgia, like you would really think that their team imploded. But what I look at is you have a lot of returning talent coming back. You have a really good recruiting class that's coming in right now. They just picked off is it Michael something Pittman from Oregon, the wide receiver. So like they're bringing in to fill out some of these holes on the roster, and you would think that based off of reactions from like the sports radio and ESPN that they're completely imploding. And meanwhile, Florida State has a better class in Miami. They have a better class in Florida. They have a better class in Clemson. Like the three teams that they really need to beat and to be competitive with to maintain a high level of recruiting in the state of Florida, that Florida, Georgia hotbed area, they've signed better classes. All they have to do is continue doing what they were showing last year, which is improving. And I think they improve with having Jordan Travis come back. All it's going to do is it's going to set the table for a much more successful year this coming season.
Well, that's the one thing where it's still too early, the early signing day. I have heard rumors that this might be the last one. I don't know what they end up doing with it. Like, do they go, and if it's going to be this year, like if next year kicks in, I don't know how they would do this, but they're looking at possibly the college basketball model where the early signing period is before the season. So they would have it, in July? June? I don't know how early you can go. August? Like right before the season? Your coach is like, instead of doing camp, he's texting high school boys.
Well, I'll be honest, I think it's bullshit that you have coaches that are recruiting guys, and they're like, yeah, come to school A. And then they sign, and then 2 days they're like, and peace out. I'm going to school B now. Like, well, and they're locked into their letter of intent.
To be honest, Harbaugh and Michigan, I mean, the negative recruiting from last year, where there was all the rumors Harbaugh took that big pay cut, like this class looked like it wasn't going to be as full as in the past. And because of all the coaching moves, he stole like 4 or 5 recruits on signing day. Took dudes from Clemson, took dudes from Oklahoma, took dudes from wherever else. I forget where all the schools had. Like I think even Virginia Tech, he took one, and he jumped from like number 20 or 18 or whatever we said last week, and they're like number 8 or 9 depending on where you look. I think I saw them as high as 7 right now. I think they didn't have one guy signed, so that's kind of like pushing them down a little bit. But now they're saying that they're taking a transfer. A Mormon guy that was like a 4-star recruit that's not going to come in the recruiting class, but he's like a 300-pound, 6'7" monster. Like, that's a great get. I think he was supposed to go to Virginia or somewhere. He flipped him too. Again, Virginia, aren't they having a coaching change? So, like, how many coaches are just going to be sitting there? And Harbaugh said, like, I listened to his interview where he was like, hey, all we did was call up these guys and say, hey, we know the situation's changing. Our offer's still here if you want to talk. Perfect. Because, like, if you're the kid and you don't hear from the coach, and then the other coach, no pressure, like you're getting that, all you're hearing is, hey, I'm here for you if you want to chat. Like, I'm not saying, like, hey, come to us. You know, a lot of coaches, like, try to put that pressure on. I think that would be a relief because even if you're a new coach, I think you're coming into a new situation, you're immediately going to start pressuring the kids to keep their commitment, right? Like, hey, you're committed to Oklahoma, not USC with Lincoln Riley, right? Right? And then they're losing them. And then the guy's like, I don't really want to go to USC. I've never even been there. And then Harbaugh calls and's like, yo, you see what we're doing? We're in the playoffs this year. Oklahoma's not. Oklahoma, every time they're in the playoffs, they get blown out. So as long as we don't get blown out, we do better than them. Right? They've had 0 playoff wins. So, like, I think you have a lot to sell that way. Like, even same with Pitt, because they got a transfer from USC, too. One of their stud quarterbacks, because USC always has stud quarterbacks signed there. Haven't been developing them. You see Kenny Pickett, how would you not want to transfer there? If you're like, hey, Lincoln Riley's bringing in his quarterback, what are you going to do? And you're like, you know what, I'm going to go play with Pitt. Their guy was in the Heisman, right? Maybe they'll be the new Oklahoma. Oklahoma had all those guys transfer in and win the Heisman. Maybe Pitt will be that now.
But have you seen anything about who Pitt is looking at for their offensive coordinator?
No.
I've been trying to find, because I'm hoping that it's their wide receivers coach, Brendan Marion, because I think that would be a really good fit for them. But he's a lot younger, and usually Narduzzi likes his offensive coordinator to be like 2 years away from dying.
Hey, Nick Saban said his secret weapon was like an 80-year-old defensive coach they had.
Yes.
I didn't even know they had a guy that old.
Yes, that's the secret. You just find someone that has all of the information, because football's so cyclical. Like, oh yeah, we ran this back in 1942.
That's why I blame Penn State for the rise of Ohio State really jumping in their recruiting rankings, because they let Larry Johnson go. What are you doing, man? Now he just sits there recruiting well for Ohio State on the defensive line. They have all those Bosas and everyone. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, I knew that they were going to get rid of the early signing period, because it was like they kept it actively going while Florida State was just in their spiral. But now that they finally got their shit together, it's like, oh, guess what? Psych. we're gonna take this golden egg away from you, because I think like for the players, it sucks when you have your coach that is recruiting you leave shortly after. But on the flip side, you also have players now that are actively like 1 year transferring out, and you're hitting the portal over and over. Which to me, I genuinely don't care. But I think it hurts a lot. It's long term, it's hurting a lot of players, because there's thousands of players that are entering the portal thinking that the grass is greener somewhere else, and what they're finding is that they don't have a scholarship anymore.
Well, that's what Dabo's been arguing about. And I think you're right. Like, the more I look into his situation, where like he's losing guys, their coach left, but like he has no one on staff left, and he was bringing in these recruits, and then once you're there, if they're dropping bags and paying them, and then guess what? They're not playing. They're not getting any more payments. So you get so-and-so coach saying like, hey, you know what? You're at Clemson. Clemson doesn't get any type of endorsements. Like, Clemson's a small place, man. Who's advertising at Clemson? Mercedes-Benz? That's it. And they're not advertising with Clemson football players. Are you kidding me? So it's like, hey, look at Miami. They step in and they're like, you can transfer down here. Like, we have a gym that's paying all our guys. So, like, I think you're looking at that, and, like, I think some of those other guys are going to get buyer's remorse, where if they go to a school and they're not actually playing, because if you play dirty like that, those guys are going to transfer out. I guarantee it. And so that's where it's going to be a big shift for some of those schools like the Auburns and stuff, where it's been, I mean, pretty much, I don't even think it's rumored at this point. Same with Ole Miss, where they're just paying guys. I mean, look at Laramie Tunsil. They leaked this text where coach was literally texting the dad about paying their electric bill. Now it's like, hey, yeah, you can get like shady guys paying your electric bill, or you know what, you could just go to a bigger school and get real money, you know.
Well, I love that Jimbo Fisher said NIL stands for now it's legal.
I know, he was the one. So, you know, Florida State was paying. He said he just pretended it didn't happen.
It happens everywhere.
I know it does.
Wasn't, you know, we joke about it all the time on the show. If you think it wasn't happening at your school, you're either stupid or naive.
Well, that's where it's like, now let's go and pay the players directly, because I think now you're going to see the bigger schools, and even now where like players are getting so much. Michigan's quarterback just signed with like Tom Brady's group. Did you see that? Tom Brady's like advertising. It was like him and a couple other guys, like I think one of the Maryland basketball players and stuff. But it's hey, how great is that? The greatest quarterback of all time is going to be paying your quarterback to just play there. Like, how would you not recruit that?
Well, and to bring the circle all the way back, if there were speculated reports that with Hunter going to Jackson State in prime, that there was going to be some type of deal between him and Barstool and a couple other financial opportunities that he was going to make between $1.5 and $2 million. If that's true, there's no way that Florida State was going to have those NILs to compete with that. Like they're not. They're very far behind as far as a lot of that stuff because they were behind in trying to keep up with the Georgias and Alabamas and Clemsons as far as the facilities and stuff, which drove Jimbo to A&M. And so, I think Jimbo, for as many critics as he has and had during his tail end of his time at Florida State, he saw what the writing was on the wall. I think he saw that the NILs were going to become a thing, and the way that you were going to keep up with recruiting and keeping up with staying at a high level was to be able to have those extra things like the on-campus standalone facilities and some of those extra amenities that you're not every school is going to be able to provide. So how do you attract the elite talent to your school that keeps you there? Like that's how Alabama's keeping the elite of the elite there. They have that extra stuff. It's a football factory that you're going from Bama to the pro. Like if you're a top recruit and they're offering you, why would you sign anywhere else?
Well, that's where I saw a lot of people assuming bitter fans of Florida State or something, where they were like saying about Travis going there and how he's going to really regret it because the facilities aren't going to be good and the competition is not going to be that good. But I'm thinking he's already a high recruit. He's already getting paid millions. Who cares about the facilities? He can pay for his own workouts wherever he wants to go. You don't think Deion Sanders has good facilities just for himself to work out in? He can get it done. You don't need, maybe the whole team's not working out there, but if you're one guy, and in terms of him hurting his draft stock, that means nothing. If he goes there and he tears it up, now I'm not saying maybe he's there and he's a bust. If he's a bust, then yeah, maybe he would get drafted higher if he was a bust at Alabama versus Jackson State. But if he goes there and he's a stud, it doesn't matter where you play. People get drafted high all the time. Look at Antonio Brown. He was from Central Michigan? Like, if you have talent, I don't know how high he was even drafted, but if you're going to be able to get paid and then you're going to already have that money in your pocket and you're playing at a smaller school so you have less chance of injury, let's be honest. I don't care how many trainers you have. If you're at a smaller school with, less competition, you're going to have less chance of getting hurt. People don't mention that.
A step further.
People don't mention that, but that's the truth.
Transfer portal. If they blow the conference out of the water and they're winning the national championship, if they're winning that in back-to-back years, Deion and Hunter could end up going. They could transfer out to a bigger Power Five.
Someone with the initials FSU, I think.
Fresno State would probably take them both.
Florida State, they welcome them home.
They had an opportunity, and we went with Iron Mike, and he's got us back. He got us back where we needed to be.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, I've said this to you. You don't want Cristobal to fail at Miami. Florida State to snub Deion again, and then Miami hire him, because then you could bring the U swagger right back. Could you imagine having a sideline with Deion calling plays, but then you also have Warren Sapp and Michael Irvin and a bunch of other guys just being, side boosters? Kids would be signing up for that. Florida State would be sitting there saying, "Oh crap, we got to play these guys again."
I trust Norvell.
Well, I hope it works out because look at Harbaugh. It took 7 years, the exact same amount of years it took Dabo Swinney at Clemson to really build the program. And now, is it going to keep that way? The coaching changes really helped them out. If they get rid of early signing period, I think coaches that go through that really swift drop. Maybe it doesn't hurt if you're there that long. Because, I mean, honestly, he wouldn't have felt it next year. Michigan has a really good young group already there. So next year they could still ball out, even if they had a poor recruiting class. I think that would have made them maybe have a downswing in a year or two, or like 2 or 3 years. I mean, so now they're able to get back in the top 10. So I don't even think they're going to have that drop off. You just got to be able to ride it out. There's more rumors that Ryan Day might be going to the NFL. Ohio State, what I've heard from people connected to Ohio State is that they will never hire Urban Meyer back. Because it's almost like a laughingstock now where college students were paying tuition dollars to go to a leadership class taught by Urban Meyer, who now, on the biggest stage of football, NFL, is shown that his leadership skills suck. So, like, how many of those students are, like, looking at their accredited transcripts and they're like, oh, my God, that guy was my leadership teacher. He's kicking the kicker. Don't make his kick. So it's almost like a joke. So
I'll kick whoever I want to kick.
So I think some schools would hire him.
Do you know who he didn't kick?
Who?
Hernandez or the Pouncey twins.
I thought they were going to say
Percy Harvin, because they would have just choked the shit out of him.
Well, he didn't have that at Ohio State. Now you're looking at it and it's like, all right, well, where's he going to go? You know he's going to come back. He's going to be back in college, Matt.
His wife's going to say, I think you've enjoyed your time in the NFL long enough.
Well, I don't think he's going to go to the NFL. I think they were out to get him, number one, much like they were kind of out to get Harbaugh when he was at college, kept saying, like, oh, he's come back to the NFL every year. Remember that? And so now it's kind of like they've seen him have success, so now everyone's kind of just like, hey, yeah, we're really happy for Jim Harbaugh. We'd love to have him back in the NFL. And they're kind of keeping that door open with Urban. It was like, no, get out of here. Shoo. Same with, like, Nick Saban. No NFL guy ever talks about, like, Nick Saban coming back to coach the NFL. Because guess what? They don't want him. No one wants him. He can run his little, like, minor league. He's like the best minor league coach they probably have. But, like, did they give minor league coach awards? I don't know. I mean, yeah, you have all the facilities and the NFL guys there, and you're bringing all these other coaches in. That's why everyone's like, oh, he's the greatest coach of all time. I'm like, yeah, he's the greatest manager. I don't know about the greatest coach. He's surrounded by great coaches that flamed out for one reason or the other. I mean, like, he wasn't Urban Meyer where he was winning and going undefeated at Utah and Florida. I mean, he had the one good year at LSU. He also lost that bowl game against Iowa when they were higher ranked. He didn't really do anything at Michigan State. It's like he hasn't won everywhere. Urban Meyer had won everywhere until Jacksonville. That's why I think it's going to eat him alive. And he's going to end up at, like, Auburn or Florida State. Or, like, where Florida State might care a little bit now about the optics, but, like, Auburn doesn't. If Lane Kiffin would have went to Miami, Ole Miss would have hired him. Liberty will have an Urban Meyer. Could you imagine?
I think they'll take a keg of dynamite at this point to blow Hugh Freeze out of there.
All he has to do is take one other job, though. I think Hugh Freeze has kind of had his redemption where he could go somewhere. He could have went to, like, Virginia Tech or somewhere.
No, I think he could have, but I think he's in a spot where he's very much insulated. And I would be very, very surprised to see him leave. Plus, when you look at, for as much talk as you've brought up about facilities and some of the other, like, high end stuff, I think with Liberty's ability to raise funds and spend the money that they need to with their endowments, I think that's a place that they're wanting to win, they're wanting to build, that he can. They're supportive of the athletics, that they'll do what he wants to make him successful.
Well, that's where, like, the NIL, like I've been saying, you're going to see schools that people don't expect come out, and you're going to see schools that people have just grown used to being successful at the NFL, or not the NFL level, but at the college level, where they're going to now start to drop off because it's kind of a level playing field where it wasn't before. Like, Auburn could have dropped bags before. Now they have to do it above board. Is Auburn going to be able to, in the middle of Alabama, nowhere, going to be able to draw advertising dollars that somewhere like maybe Pitt comes back? People underestimate it, but Pitt's a pretty big market compared to some of these other smaller schools and some of the city schools too. Or like, hell, look at Michigan. Michigan has guys that are donating part of their NIL, Matt, and it's like a good chunk. And you're like, if you're a recruit coming in, you have to be wondering like, yo, he's donating a good bit of money. Wonder how much he's actually making, you know? And maybe that's not like the optics. Maybe he's donating it all. I don't know. But I'm saying like, if you're seeing that, that's another way to advertise your program where everybody's covering it. They showed it like during the NFL game. Our backup running back, the backup guy, giving away turkeys on Thanksgiving. Like, how many other schools are doing that? None. Perfect advertising for the NIL, where they're like, look, he's getting so much money, he's giving turkeys away on Thanksgiving. Like, that has to help recruiting. Some other school, it's like, oh yeah, you're a small school. Like I wonder how Baylor's going to do, because they've had success. They're number one in basketball right now. Their women's basketball team's been awesome. And it's like, all right, are they going to be able to keep it going? They're a private school like Liberty. If they're able to get those private funds in there, what's not to say Liberty can't do it either? And you have a rise of like TCU, Baylor, Notre Dame, BYU. Because I think BYU is another sleeping giant too, where everyone says their fan base isn't that big. You hear all these like West Virginia fans and like all these other Big 12 fans are like, their fan base isn't that big, overhyped. And they're drawing more TV viewers than any other team out west. And it's like, maybe it's because their games are on at 11 p.m. Maybe that's why only 3 million people are tuning in. And it's like, well, maybe. It's like, well, now we're going to find out. I mean, they were one of the two schools with Miami where they had boosters immediately pay for all their players. So, like, and now they're getting the NCAA investigation into it. If the NCAA clears those two schools, you don't think some booster's going to jump up for, like, the top 10 programs and be like, we're going to do that now, too. Like, those two schools, Miami and BYU, stuck their neck out there. And now the other schools are just waiting to see if it's okay. Because if not, then they'll get the death penalty or whatever. And then 3 years later, it'll be okay anyway. Be like, oh, okay. I guess you can't do that. So, it's going to be weird. If they get rid of it, whatever. Go back to the old signing day. I really like the February one. But remember, Harbaugh did that big thing. That was like one of the last years they brought in the early signing period because I don't think they liked it. Because not every school is going to be able to put on a star-studded event with Tom Brady coming in and introducing your recruiting class. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was like signing the stars or whatever, and Harbaugh had like a big like thing where there was like comedians from Hollywood and stuff there, and like Tom Brady was there and Derek Jeter maybe. I can't remember who was all there, but it was like a big stud. And other coaches were like, no. And then next thing you know, they're like, we're going to do an early signing period because that's not what college football is about. And I'm like, no, that is what college football is about. And you're mad about it. And so now you're going to change the rules again.
The one thing that I liked with the early signing was being able to have those guys commit early, sign early, and be on campus early.
But you could still do that. When the signing with the Stars happened, it was before the early signing period. If I remember correctly, and it's been a few years because I don't remember how many years back it was, but the only people that could be at Harbaugh's event were athletes that were enrolled in the spring. So it was kind of his way to kind of get them in, process through admissions, and that are on campus. And I honestly think a lot of coaches complained, and that's why you got the early signing period, and that's why almost everyone does it now. Where if you look how many people sign, there's like a limit of like, 15 or so? I don't know if it's an admissions limit or what, but there's like a limit of how many people can actually go in and start practicing with the team. Harbaugh started that for his signing with the Stars. And then the players that couldn't be there, they were allowed to have like their photo and their name and something else. Like there was very strict rules on what the NCAA would allow. But the only people that could go and meet Tom Brady were ones that were actually enrolled in classes. So it's like, oh yeah, sure. You're saying if I enroll right now, I'll meet Tom Brady and Derek Jeter and we'll hang out and like do a little thing. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll start practicing right now. Like, why would you not? And imagine if it was NIL, Matt, and you're signing and then you're like doing this event and there's going to be advertisers there that are meeting with you and like, hey, you want to come talk about my car dealership? I'll give you $20,000. He's like, yeah, I'll do that. Because that's the new future. Where before it was kind of like, hey, I think that McDonald's bag has your name on it. The guy goes, picks it up, there's 20 grand in it. And he's like, all right, cool. That's how they used to do it. Now it's like right there. So I think a lot of it will be ironed out. And I think you're going to see teams that are able to push the boundaries really have success. That's my only thing.
Well, you're right. I think it's a higher window to be seen of the haves and the have-nots. But I think that's like there's always been a certain level of whether it was the private boosters just going that had the financial means to be able to pay a top recruit and just saying, I'm not affiliated with the university, but here's money to go to this school. And the school is able to deny any wrongdoings in it. But you knew where that money was coming from. You know, I think that was all that has been going on as long as the game's been played. But
like I said, now you're going to see it tenfold, and you're going to see people actually get more money, because I bet there were some high-profile guys that didn't want that extra sight on their business, where before, I think a lot of it was more because what they do, a couple of different outlets did insight into the boosters that were paying, and it was more like alums or someone that had some money. I think car dealerships were one of the biggest ones, where they have a successful car dealership. If you're not from that area, no one knows who you are. So like they take it a step further, and they're like, you know what, I'll get my name out there even more, and I'll be at those booster meetings. But like some of the bigger ones, like Tennessee's, like Haslam or whatever, the guy that owns the Browns, like I don't think he was illegally paying boosters, because why would he want that microscope on his finances, you know? Now he has a chance to actually do that. Maybe it will kind of get him away from some of the Browns' finances. Who knows? So, like, let's see some of these big boosters. I mean, we've seen it with, like, T. Boone Pickens in Oklahoma State. Like, he's kind of kept them around, where now they might be the premier Big 12 program now, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. I don't know, in terms of, like, viewership, what program would be bigger nationally. I would say maybe Oklahoma State, West Virginia. You have Baylor there now. Kansas, but for basketball, not really for football. I don't think anyone cares about them for that. Who else would be left? Texas Tech? Not really. I don't know. So one guy could swing it. And Oklahoma State, they really blew it. They were a win away from keeping Georgia out of the playoffs. Or Cincinnati, whichever way you think of it. I don't think Georgia would have got in. I don't think there was any way they could let Cincinnati out of the playoffs this year after they beat Notre Dame. And they ranked Notre Dame so high. So, blame Oklahoma State for 2 SEC teams in the playoff. They choked with their 4 interceptions. Anything else you have, early signing day or whatever?
No. I'm just excited to see how the rest of the... Like, there were some recruits that pushed their signings to the spring. I'm curious to see just how the rest of those rankings fall, because the thing that always amazes me with the early signing period, and even just signing day in general, is that you never see that recalculation of the classes, where how many of those kids stayed with the school, how many went to the league, how many transferred out, failed out.
Well, that's where you look at the the composite they do now. The only thing that I think really hurt the composite in years past, the same with the blue chip ratio, they didn't account for transfers. Now they almost have to. I don't know if they counted them this year, but that's the one thing where I think they definitely need to add them, so you can kind of see which talent or what talent each roster has. Like, I think getting like Michigan had a big defensive lineman transfer from like Oregon State. That depth was very needed this year. And without that depth, who knows how fresh Hutchinson stays, you know? Like, you need to have guys transfer in, and for them not to count it, like maybe, quarterback transfers over the past haven't, like, worked out or whatever, but getting that extra depth just for, like, reps and stuff, you need it. So they're going to have to start adding it.
Because when you look at how they're handing out their stars, where if he commits to Michigan, he's just a 4-star. But as soon as he commits to Alabama, he gets that extra 5.
Well, I told you during the actual day, Michigan had their 5-star he signed, and then immediately their rankings, they re-ranked it. In Michigan, they had him as 0 5-stars for a while, and I'm like, are they going to add his 5-star back? Because you can click on his profile and see that he's still a 5-star. I don't know why they dropped it. And then miraculously, they recalculated it, and Michigan was up to 7. Then now they're down to 9. Like I said, some of them had it still at 7, or some of them had it to 8.
And to me, whatever. That star ranking, it's so finicky that it's today you're this, tomorrow you're that. So I almost think you have to take that with a grain of salt too, because how many of those guys are going to contribute? If you get a good class, to me, I think there was the class that came in around the time of Jameis where they signed all those guys right as Bowden was retiring and Jimbo stepped in, that they signed the class that laid the foundation for that 2013 national championship run. That it was the perfect storm of getting the guys in, signed them, and they were able to contribute in that perfect window. So I think being able to sign that class, having the guys that you need and being able to get them to contribute, helps with that perfect storm.
And there's also so UNC and Ohio State both have very small classes in the top 10. But if they have a bunch of guys go pro, like Ohio State's going to have, the 4-stars are pretty much all locked up now with this early signing period. So they're going to have to backfill with lesser recruits. I think that makes a big difference in terms of looking at the team composite, where before you're overwhelmingly blue chip guys, and then you're losing blue chip guys to go to the NFL. And then your class turns more into a normal class that everyone else has. So you're up there right now with the Alabamas, but I don't think they're going to end up with as many 4 5-stars as Alabama or Georgia. And if Ryan Day leaves, do those guys get out of their thing? Because I thought for sure that the way the rules are, if you sign in the early period and your coach leaves, you can still get out before February. And it's not a transfer. That's how I believe it is, unless they changed it with the transfer rule. But I thought before, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if Najee Harris ever signed with Michigan, but he had a dorm before he went to Alabama. So I don't know how that works out, where you're trying to get the guys on early enrollment. If they don't show up and they end up going somewhere else, does that count as a transfer? I don't know. I don't know how specific it has to be. Maybe you didn't sign, maybe you did something else, but I think a lot of the early guys are locked up, and unless you can get players that just flip because of coach changes, who knows? But we'll see. The last topic I had was bowl season. I kind of already went into it, where bowl season doesn't matter. I brought this up earlier. Kenny Pickett, Kenneth Walker, 2 big Heisman-type guys, both sitting out their bowl games. Now you have the other games that are playing, early. Nothing really stands out. I mean, you see Oregon State losing their bowl game to Utah State, and it's kind of all right, well, we kind of knew that the Pac-12 wasn't good. BYU loses to UAB. That one kind of shocked me, because I thought BYU was really going to come in to the Big 12 and possibly take their program to the next level. But you can't be losing these lower bowl games. Those are the games where your team should win. And then if you're in the higher ones, that's where you normally lose them or have a losing record or close to 500, compared to when you get to play a team from a smaller conference. That's when you pad your stats as a school. So, you look at some of these other bowl games, it's I don't know. And did any of them stand out to you?
Not any in particular. It's been a slow build right now, because it's been nice to just have active games on. The one thing that I will say is that there are so many of these bowl games now that are starting really early in the afternoon.
Yeah, at noon.
It's I'm working right now, ESPN.
I went out for lunch, and I'm
some of these back.
I'm why do they have a game on? And then I'm oh my God, that's the bowl game. It's on right now? I thought it was on later. Like, put them at 5 or 6, like I said, but I don't think they want to compete with that news. I mean, they have some at 3:30. Like, I think there's one on Thursday, but that's getting close to Christmas, so you might not have that many things on. But this is the week where it's a lot of small-time matchups. Maybe, like some of the other bigger ones, like East Carolina beats Boston College. Is that going to really push the needle for them recruiting-wise or taking that next step? I don't know. Like, Houston beating Auburn, it's like that's just more of a laugh at Auburn. I know Houston's going to the Big 12 now, so maybe that will kind of even things out. But I really don't think there's any big-time matchups until you really get into next Tuesday, where you have Mississippi State play Texas Tech, Mike Leach versus Old School, UCLA versus NC State. And so we'll probably be hitting on some of these because we'll be doing the show sometime then. That's really the big first week. But these first ones, to me, cut them out. And they're like, well, we're giving these smaller schools a fair shake. Like, you can see UCF play Florida. It's like Florida was awful this year. Who wants to watch them play? If UCF loses to them, people are just going to laugh and say, yeah, well, same old UCF, claiming natties they didn't earn. If UCF beats them, they're like, oh, yeah, that didn't really matter because Florida sucks, remember? We fired our coach. So it's like a lose-lose for some of these schools. Like, I know the players get hyped up, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I'll still be an advocate. Let the conferences play in the playoffs. It's not really a playoff if you just pick 2 SEC schools and then 2 other teams that you think that they can beat. Right? That's what I want to see. Let them play. There shouldn't be a bye week. If they really think that some of these other conference champs are that much worse, beat them. Like, is Alabama afraid of Western Kentucky? Or UTSA? Probably they are. Did they win the conference? San Antonio? I mean, they were 12-1, so I assume that they did. But, like, Notre Dame played nobody. They played Cincinnati. They lost to them. They ended up 11-1. How is that any better than San Antonio? You know, I don't know who they ended up losing to, North Texas, but they played Illinois, beat them, played Memphis, Western Kentucky. Like, they played through their schedule, went 12-1. You can't really say that Notre Dame's 11-1 was much better. You really can't. Notre Dame played teams without a pulse. Their schedule is awful. Let's be honest. Florida State even almost beat them, right? That's all you need to know.
Oh.
They should have beat them. Florida State could have really changed the college football season this year.
Could have.
They lose to Jacksonville State. It's like, what are you doing? They lost to Notre Dame. They could have beat Notre Dame, and then no one would have had to hear about Notre Dame. Then maybe Cincinnati's win's not that good.
Growing. It's a learning curve. We learned how to use a prevent defense.
All I'm saying
hopefully
is
we'll never have to use prevent defense.
It might have worked
again.
out, though, because if Notre Dame loses to Florida State, they might have somehow figured out a matrix way to get Ohio State in the playoffs, Matt. That would have saved Brian Day's him from going to the NFL, where maybe it will happen. I don't even know if it matters because Ryan Day is only 500 against Michigan, Matt. Maybe he's running. Who knows? We'll see. I'm just hoping for some big bowl games, maybe some upsets. Hopefully Michigan has a good showing in the playoffs next week. That would be good for the Big Ten because some of the Big Ten appearances haven't been that good in the playoffs. There are some rumors that Georgia's going through some coronavirus stuff, and they're trying to lock it down. Alabama had already had their team in lockdown, which shows you the difference between Georgia and Alabama. One's taking it seriously, has already the precautions in place. Georgia, not so much. And that's where I think you see the difference in the two schools. Michigan's new, so who knows what the hell they're doing. Hopefully copying off Alabama, that's for sure. Anything you have for the final bell?
For the final bell, in honor of Florida A&M claiming the HBCU national title, even though South Carolina State put the boots to Jackson State, I say go to our store, go to our website, southboundsports.com, and get you a shirt that says claim it, because we're fans of claiming those national championships.
I'm saying, so I didn't understand how the national championship worked. So are they D1? Or are they not?
D1-ish.
Because I was trying to look at, so they're not included in the playoffs, right?
No,
but
they're just separate.
But are they like? I'm trying to look and see because I was confused. I was trying to look and see. So they're not listed on the D1 schools, right? They're like the SWAC, isn't it?
I think.
Yeah, so they're not even listed on ESPN. So like they talk about ESPN saying like, oh yeah, you should pay attention to these schools. You literally can't find them on the website. I was trying to get, because then I was confused, because then I thought someone said that Florida State lost to Deion Sanders as a coach, and I'm like, no, that was Jacksonville State. That's a different school, right? So then I'm like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. As I look at this now, it does say that Michigan Wolverines are getting the coronavirus booster shot as a team. Now, getting ready for the playoff game. Smart move, Matt. Smart move. Then you won't have issues, right?
Check the box.
Because they'll have to wait the 14 days, so then they won't test them, right, if they all get the booster at the same time.
If you don't get tested, then you don't have COVID.
Well, if they get the booster, the test will come positive, doesn't it? Isn't that how the booster works? I don't know.
One of the best quotes from my high school kids a couple years ago said, "Hey, coach, don't worry, I'm never going to get COVID." I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Because if you never get tested, you never get COVID."
Oh man. Yeah, I'm looking for A&M here. They're not like, you can't find their thing. I was just trying to see what their record was, and I couldn't find it. They're from Tallahassee, so you know that they're a real good school there. Probably the school in Tallahassee, right? Isn't that the state
blood
capital?
out your ass. It is the kid. Look at you learning social studies.
Well, what other school would be there that was any good, Matt, that has won the national championship in recent times?
2013. You won it literally in your lifetime that you could remember, that you were trying to talk sin about while it was happening.
What? About Auburn?
Yes. While Damon Craig was stealing signals.
Stealing signals. Oh my god.
And then we put him in his place, and Jabril Peppers wasn't injured for that game either.
Hey, Jabril Peppers, I know that's another bowl casualty of the bowl system, Matt. Imagine if that Florida State-Michigan game was a playoff game. Jabril Peppers plays, Michigan wins, goes on to the next round. Things would have been much better, don't you think?
I still think he wouldn't have played. And then I would hear about it ad nauseum for 47 years.
Hey, he was in the Heisman, Matt. How many defensive guys, by the way, if you're a defensive guy, why would you not go to Michigan? Like, they're always in New York, right?
Yeah, second place. You can go to Michigan. You can be home with second place.
Chuck Woodson won it.
Oh, and you're really going to talk about history?
Charles Woodson was the greatest defensive guy in college
What were you,
of all time, Matt.
What were you, 3 when that happened?
Matt, national champions. What are you talking about? You said in my lifetime. Some of those Florida State ones, there's no way you remember them. Like 1990, what, 1?
93, 99. Yes, I do.
Well, if you remember the 93, the 97 is much more believable as someone remembering that.
99 was a good team. The thing that's comical is that this 13 Florida State team, people are going to act like they're not one of the greatest teams. They try to throw the LSU team on there as the greatest offensive team. Florida State had like 300 fewer plays and still had as many points as what LSU put up. But it's like, because it's Florida State, they just kick rocks at them.
I know you're really bitter about Florida State this show, right?
I'm bitter in general because there's a lot of negativity. And it needs to stop. What we're going to do is by Iron Mike to set the tone. I was happy to see with Micah Pittman signing that he was talking about his recruitment to Florida State, and Dillingham, their offensive coordinator, went to Oregon, and I was surprised to see how open Pittman was, saying with Dillingham going to Oregon, he's like, he had respect for the Florida State staff, so he wasn't going to negatively try to recruit him to stay, even though he was one of the coaches that was really high on him, on recruiting him to Florida State when he was in the portal. So I thought that was a good thing for Dillingham on his way out, because there's a lot of coaches that would say, I know what kind of talent he has. I'm just going to keep him here with me and keep him in my system. So kudos to him for keep maintaining that relationship with Norvell and honoring the fact that Florida State was trying to flip him from Oregon while he was in the portal to Florida State.
So I finally found the SWAC. ESPN has its own page for it, but it's not linked anywhere. You like have to search it in Google. And Florida A&M, it's almost a joke that they claimed it. They lost to Jackson State, and they finished 9-3, Matt.
Claim it.
Like they're worse all around.
Claim it. Guess what? It doesn't matter. If you got the balls to do it and no one's going to fight you on it, claim it.
They're claiming it. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for listening to the show. I don't have anything else. You have anything else?
Claim it.
All right. Check out our websites, uponsports.com. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends. We'll be getting on some more bowl stuff next week. Hopefully the NFL starts to be a little bit of a clearer picture. But I don't know if it's going to happen. I think we're still going to have delays. Hopefully not. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.